All right, today we'll take a look at my newly installed fixed quarter windows in my 1955 two-door wagon. That's coming up next in the Shade Tree Garage. Welcome back to the channel, guys. And I wanted to share with you guys that I have my fixed quarter windows installed on my two-door wagon. And it was kind of a flying by the seat of my pants, if you understand what I mean. I bought the appropriate glass and the gaskets without being really sure how it all goes together. Now, it looks good. I'm pleased with the results, and it wasn't perfect, but I did learn some lessons. I'll share a couple of these lessons with you now. The gaskets I bought from a vendor for the quarter windows were about 12 inches too long. In fact, I'd put the gasket around the perimeter of the window, and it was hanging off. 12 inches too long, approximately, a little bit more. And I was going to call the vendor and say, there's something going on. I got the wrong gasket or whatever, but it fit. This glass has two corners that are square, 90 degrees, and then when you go to the front of the car, up here in the front, the windows are the glass has a curved radius. It's curved, so the gasket fit perfectly on the square corners. It just it fit it perfectly. It was the extra gasket length was in the gasket that went the rest of the way around the glass. So rather than call the vendor and send it back and wait for if in fact it's not by design, I'm not so sure it's not designed to be a custom fit, cut to fit. But that's what I had to do to get the gasket to fit the glass well. I had to cut the gasket, and I used some of my urethane windshield glass or glass adhesive to basically glue the ends of the gasket back together. Now that worked really, really well. Gluing the gasket back together, I had, I think I paid like $79.95 for this set of gaskets. It's just not, you're just taking your scissors to them. Just a little hesitant to do that, but I did. All right, now here's a tip, a couple of tips for you. If you're doing fixed windows in, I guess any fixed window, at least like a side glass, not windshield or rear window. For starters, if you have to section that gasket because there's too much gasket, like I did, and cut 12 inches or so out, pick a flat spot, where your channel or the gasket is going along a flat edge, straight edge. The first one I did, I cut right at the corner, one of the 90-degree corners. The gasket fits tight between those two corners, and once I cut the rest of the gasket off right there at that corner, it pulled towards it pulled away from the corner. And so instead of a nice clean right angle, that gasket was skewed out from the real corner of the glass. I glued everything together and with the urethane adhesive, and it worked great. Only when I had to put that glass in, that top left corner wasn't a 90-degree angle. It had this bulge in it right at the top. The fix for that, utility knife. I just cut the bulge out of it without cutting down into the glass channel. And, that it was a little delicate work. I didn't want to ruin the glass channel or hit the glass with the knife, but it worked really well, and it fit. All right, now I've got both of them in. Now I was under the impression that the garnish molding held the window in, and maybe it clamped the gasket up against the outer part of the window opening. That's not quite how it works. I'm sure it helps, but the glass with the gasket on it was a very tight fit on both sides. And to finalize the installation, to get the last part of the gasket and glass in, where it was flush, where it should be. I had to use my persuader here. I had to use a rubber mallet, and I was a little leery about doing that too, but I was banging on the gasket, not the glass. But that did it, and it worked, and I'm tickled to death with the results. I'll give you a better look at the window opening here in just a moment. Something else I'm sure all of you who have a Tri-5 have had to deal with are people who use something similar to drywall screws to attach the interior moldings, the garnish moldings. So many of these garnish moldings have had large ass wood screws or drywall screws used. The proper fastener now, the domed head Phillips screws, just fall in the hole, and there's nothing to hold it there. So I've got to rehab a number of those holes on these garnish moldings here in the back to get them to tighten up. But I will tell you, the garnish moldings complete the look of the window, but they do not necessarily hold the window in. It's just the compression of the gasket. I'll give you a look at what if I can find it on video. I have a video clip of the brackets I had to put to cover over the gap in the window opening, the gap where the glass would have gone up and down in the channel. I'm convinced this car had roll-up windows in the back. There's evidence that there was a regulator here, and there's the remnants of the channel all the way around both windows. Let's see. So in addition to, if you have to section that gasket, don't be afraid to. And that adhesive you use, like to glue in the glass or the vent window into the bottom channel, don't be afraid to use that. That works great. All right, and now the first one, like I said, I cut at the corner. The second one I cut in the middle, and you can't tell I sectioned it at all. Now that one, well, you can't really tell the corner either, because the corner is hidden by the corner of the window opening, so it's not really visible. Now, something else I would recommend, I didn't do it and I wish I had. When you have the gasket on that piece of glass, or as you're putting it on, I would recommend putting a couple of dabs of that urethane adhesive in the bottom, in the channel of that gasket, so it will cure and adhere tightly to the glass. One of the problems I had on both windows was it was such a tight fit and I didn't do that. I didn't glue it, put anything to adhere the gasket to the glass. So it was kind of loose. And when in tight spots, when I had to use my persuader to get the glass to seat, sometimes it would twist the gasket. It would twist the gasket a little bit. And you can, now I know where those spots are. And I had to, it took a little work with a couple of flat bladed screwdrivers and a putty knife to get that window to push in and seat without twisting the gasket at the same time. But I got it done. Just be aware that I would have been money ahead had this thing's shaking, had I put a little glue in ever so often in that gasket track and when I put it on the glass. All right, now another thing is be aware that if you're planning on a fixed window, just be aware that you may run into some issues with the other metal parts of the opening. For whatever reason, it may have some other attachments, some other, and what I ran into on one window was that there was an outward bend on some of the pieces that were in that area, and so I had to gently bend them back, tap them back with the body hammer, so that the gasket could slide past it. Anyway, that worked, and I'm tickled to death with it. Let me see if I can unmount this camera and give you a look at what's at the window opening. I've got the garnish molding on this window. I don't on the other side. I've got. I'm going to have to get in here and rehab some of these mounting holes. But anyway, give you a look at what's going on. This is This is the front corner. This wiring goes to my dome light, which has no, which as you'll find out down here is cut off. All right, so this is, it is flush up against the outer molding. Now, this is a bracket I made. It's basically a 90-degree, and it is epoxied up against this part of that channel, and it just goes straight out so that the window has something to do. This was one I had to cut off because it was too high. It had shifted after I put the epoxy on it. All right, now right here's another one, and it's just, like I say, it's just a 90-degree piece of metal I bent in a vise. And this is just leftover epoxy. I had another, the first one I mounted here was way too tall. And so I basically had to remove the two, or cut one and remove this other one, and then make two that would be flush with the top of this channel here. So as you can see, this gasket and the window actually aren't in danger of falling down in the door. You can see this is a channel here that the garnish molding sits on, and so with these two um, right angles, it allowed me to get this glass seated, and get it seated. All right, now down here, this there's a piece of metal that runs up here. It sticks out. You can it holds the gasket in there. I don't know that it's designed to do that, but it does. And up here at the top, you can see, let me get this light out of the way. All right, now this is where I cut the gasket the first time. And you can see this gob of sealant. You can see this gob of sealant that, and I had to trim this to get it to fit. I had to trim this corner because it was a big blob up here. I had to trim that to get that to fit, but it does. It's good and flush. It's good and flush now. All right, and then I've got my garnish that goes back in the back. All right, well, it's not very pretty, but it's there and it works. Anyway, I've got to rehab some of these. I've got to rehab some of the holes from this garnish molding. And I found, and it was hard as hell to find them, there are connectors that connect this garnish molding with this one. And there's a screw mount down here. And they are hard to find, and I happened to find a set on eBay recently. So I've got those now. And there's one up here that'll screw up here and connect this garnish molding with the back one. So that's what she looks like. Now there's the mount for the regulator for the back window, and you can tell there was a regulator mounted there at one time. All right, there was a regulator mounted there at one time, and right here is where the channel is that the regulator pushes up, uses to push up the arms to raise and lower the window. If you're wondering why I decided to go with fixed windows, the only reason I selected the fixed windows was that it would be a great deal quicker to get the glass in it. This car has, in Kentucky, they have what's called a classic car title, and it's for, the cars that have to be titled, but they're not going to roll anytime soon. Or maybe you have a roller with no engine and transmission, and that's the type of title you get. You pay minimal taxes, and you don't have to keep insurance on it, or So this has a classic title on it, and to convert it to a title where I can actually tag it, it has to pass a safety inspection. It's the same inspection that cars coming in from out of state have to go through. And they basically, the big thing is the VIN number. They want to make sure cars coming in from out of state are not stolen. And then a basic safety check. Do the headlights work? Tail lights, brake lights, turn lights, windshield wipers, basic thing. Do the brakes work? Basic safety things like that. And so this car, of course, did not have either quarter window in it and didn't have glass in the passenger door. So there's no way it was going to pass any kind of inspection. So now that I've got the quarter windows in it, the only thing now is to finish the passenger window. And I just got the parts to finish that on Monday, so a couple of days ago. So I've got my work cut out for me. And as soon as I get that done, I can get this inspected and tagged. Now, that doesn't mean I'm done. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for this installment from the Shade Tree Garage. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment, please do. I'd love to hear other experiences you guys have had with fixed rear windows in any sort of Chevy. All right, take care, and we'll see you next time we come around in the Shade Tree Garage.